everyone, you're listening to Intersections of Public Service, the Weldon Cooper podcast created by UVA students and staff that takes a look at pressing issues in our community, how public servants address them, and what you can do to help. I'm your host, Claire Downey, and in this episode I will be interviewing Choetsow Tenzin, who along with Alex Moreno and Lucas Johnson, passed a bill in the Virginia Legislature at only 17 years old. How did they do that, you may ask? Well, they all attended the High School Leaders Program, also known as HSLP, in the summer of 2017. The High School Leaders Program is a branch of the Sorensen Institute of Political Leadership. The core mission of Sorensen is to increase trust, civility, and respect in Virginia's political discourse. It was within this program that they were able to turn their concerns over mental health education into a policy that will improve the standards of how mental health is addressed in Virginia high schools. Now, Choetsow is currently a first year at Harvard, casual, so if you notice a slight difference in audio quality or sudden urge to read a dusty book while wearing elbow patches, it's because we recorded this podcast remotely from the Cooper Center to a Harvard library.
Hi Claire, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I interviewed Alex recently, and I asked him a lot of questions about his experience at the High School Leaders Program and what it was like after y'all were done. So I was just curious, how did you hear about HSLP?
Well, actually, I think I found about it by accident. So it was the summer before my senior year, and I was just looking for something to do that would really play to my passions and, be really productive over the summer. And I think I was talking to my guidance counselor about some of the ideas I had, whether it was like an internship or something else. And then I think she just had gotten this random email from HSLP and said, "Oh, you should apply to this. You might really like it." I just tried to give it a shot, and luckily they accepted me.
So could you tell me about your first impressions about the High School Leaders Program? Like, what were your expectations, and then what actually happened?
I think for sure I was definitely really intimidated at first because I had never done a summer program as catered to students, I guess you could say. Like, it's a 2-week stay at campus program, and I had never really done anything like that before. But I just remember kind of finally being on UVA campus and having this feeling, oh, I'm kind of going to be a student here for 2 weeks. That's cool. And then getting to meet all the other amazing people that I was in this program with. So that really surprised me.
So what made you want to work on mental health education?
I just remember being slightly drawn to healthcare. I wanted to learn more about it. So that's why I think I chose the group. But it wasn't until we got into our smaller groups and we started discussing about what type of topic we wanted to approach within healthcare that teen mental health was brought up. All of a sudden I was like, wait, why did I never think of this before? I was thinking like, much more serious things like, insurance or something that's still very important. But at the time as a high schooler, it's not that close to my relative world, right? So I think that was kind of the process. And we're like, yeah, we should definitely do this. I didn't even realize it was a problem until someone finally said it. And I was like, yeah, it is a problem. I've seen it this whole time. I began to notice mental health in middle school through friends because all of a sudden I went from being a kindergartner or someone in elementary school to having friends who were self-harming and talking about depression. But I still didn't have the vocabulary for it, that's for sure. I knew this was something, I just didn't know what it was, right? It's kind of weird reflecting back to it now because at the time I felt so much older, right? Like, kids don't really want to seek adult help because they think they know what they're doing. For most part, that's just not true. There's some things that I think back on like, wow, that person should have actually gotten much better help than maybe the people around them at that time had given them. Middle school is always a very hard time for kids because you're going through so many changes, not only like mentally, but physically as well. And often those two things can clash. And if there's not that good of a support network for you, it just leads into a bigger risk down the road. So then I think throughout high school, you also have just another level of shock, right? Now you've maybe slightly moved on more from the physical aspect, but it's now more mental because for the first time, people are like, oh, now your grades matter. Now school matters. You go from being around people that are relatively very similar to your age to having a 4-year age difference where some people can drive and some people can't, right? So that kind of environmental shift, I think some people can't adapt to that.
So how does the bill that you, Alex, and Lucas made address that issue?
That's a really good question. I think the interesting part of it is when we started thinking about this bill and wanting to put it forth, we knew it wouldn't solve every single aspect of the problem, right? I mean, that's just not possible, right? So I think if I had gotten more of an education of what mental health was, and then the people that could actually provide better help than maybe I could have, it would have helped me and helped a lot of my friends or people I knew who were affected by it.
The specific changes that they made in their bill was that the Virginia Department of Education must update the standards of learning for 9th and 10th graders to include mental health in health classes, as well as add a mental health counselor to each high school.
So that's what I think this bill is about. It's about not only connecting students to the right resources, but providing them a better education so they can make wiser decisions. And of course, a huge part of it is also the stigma. There is still a large stigma against mental health. I think people are a lot more braver coming forth about it and people are a lot more accepting, but there's still a lack of knowledge even with that acceptance. And so hopefully what we hope from this bill is that students can be more aware, more thoughtful, and more educated about this whole issue so they can make wiser and healthier decisions in their life.
That's awesome. What was it like coming out of the Sorensen High School Leaders Program and then taking that bill that you drafted in the class and then taking it into the real world? How did you go about doing that?
One of my distinct memories is on the last day after we presented our policy projects to state officials and other people in that field. I remember walking back and asking one of the guest speakers, hey, for our policy projects, do you actually think they have a real shot at becoming, something real or becoming a law or anything like that? And I just remember him saying, it's going to need a lot more work, but it is possible. And that just really stuck with me, I think. So I think small things like that led me to think more about it. And then since Alex, Lucas, and I lived in the same county and we were really close to each other.
We also have another podcast interviewing Alex about his experience in HSLP and working on the mental health education policy. So if you want to take a listen to that, you can find that at coopercenter.org.
It just became kind of this fluid, rapid-paced process of all of a sudden we're in coffee shops talking about if this is possible, trying to do more research and clean up some of our writings and documents, to all of a sudden being in Richmond. It's still incredible, and I don't know, it's a very unique experience in my life.
What has it been like continuing to work on this after you already passed the first bill? How do you guys get support and how do you collaborate?
Well, it's definitely harder now because I think when you get older, things get harder. It's really interesting. I think it's a learning process as we go. Like last year versus this year, we're still trying to adjust to our new lives and trying to take in some of the good aspects of the old into them. Technology has been playing a huge part in this process. Definitely texting, FaceTiming, group messaging, all that stuff is very important. Communication is very important. I think it's a little harder now that we're in college and we're in different states to find that good support. It's not like we can drive 10 minutes over to a coffee shop and meet up with each other. But we still have people at Sorensen, like I said earlier, like Tom Walls.
So Tom Walls is the current director of the Sorensen Institute. So when I met Choetsow for the first time, she came into the office to get advice from Sorensen staff about how to get their bill passed in additional states.
Whenever we're in town and we need to meet with him, he's always so willing to set up a time and just chat with us for hours about policy. I think that really helps a lot because he's so experienced in the field, or people like him are so experienced in the field, and the fact that they're still willing to keep in contact with us even though we're not part of the program technically is very, very helpful. And I think it's harder, but I think we're still equally as passionate about the topic, and I think that helps as well because we know we're doing a good thing. And I think that helps motivate us, even though it's harder now.
What would you say are some of the main takeaways that you learned from the HSLP program about how to make policy and about how to make change?
How to make policy? literally speaking, like I think they do a really, really good job of preparing their students. They walk you through the process. I remember I loved all of my program leaders. They were so helpful with us throughout the whole process of like, not only showing us like what policy looks like and like a step-by-step process, but also taking the time to work through our policies, edit them late at night, give us critical feedback. But one thing that I just remember I always consistently talked about was after Sorensen, one of the most impactful things was this whole idea of bipartisanship. Because at that time, and even today, partisan politics plays a huge part in our nation's politics or political atmosphere. I just remember it was so refreshing to hear something new, and I guess sometimes hear something positive. Because one of my favorite things was when you go in, you're not allowed to disclose your political affiliation. No stickers, no, whatever name tags or t-shirts, right? Everyone's kind of like on this clean slate. And obviously throughout the time, like when you get to know people, you can kind of guess what their political affiliation is, like, from what they talk about during certain topics. But for the most part, we were just treated as high schoolers or at the core, like human beings, right? And you get to really know these different students that you're with on a personal level. And you just really grow these very strong friendships. And then after the 2 weeks are over, obviously when you like follow each other on social media or talk to each other later, you know each other's political affiliations, and some like I might really oppose to, but I'm still really, really good friends with them. And I think that was like one of the hugest takeaways from that whole experience. Because it is really important that we work with people that we don't always agree with, because that's how we create real change when we account both sides. I really love what Sorensen stands for. And I think it's very important in our world today, this idea of being able to work with people that you normally don't, whether it be people that you disagree with or just people you're not exposed to. If you noticed of the insignia or like the symbol of Sorensen, it's a pillar. And that the whole point or the idea of that was, that we are the people that are holding up. We're the pillars of politics. Right? The people that are willing to work together are the people that hold it up.
So you, Alex, Lucas, and 2 other students are in an organization called CCG.
Mm-hmm.
Could you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So CCG stands for the Coalition for the Common Good. This is an organization we created afterwards when we realized we didn't want this to just be like a one-shot wonder, right? Mental health is something very important to us. It's something we think our idea is helpful for other people, and we want to continue. The idea behind CCG is that we're the coalition for the common good. So using those bipartisan skills we've learned and trying to find, I don't know about the simplest, but the most applicable and reasonable solutions to issues that don't necessarily call for party lines.
Do you think that the CCG will end up expanding into other issues outside of mental health, or is that just what you all are focused on right now?
I hope so. I think as we grow older and we get more wiser, become more wiser, hopefully we can expand to other issues. But I think at this moment, mental health is what we're very comfortable with and what we have the most experience with. So I think right now we're just trying to focus on this, especially because this isn't an issue that has been solved, right? Virginia is just one state. There are 49 others. Some of them do have progress in mental health, but some of them don't. So I think our focus right now is trying to make sure we have a pretty equitable approach to all the other states. And then hopefully maybe after that, we can look into other things.
And how do you feel like Sorensen has helped you for your future?
Well, first of all, I just want to rave about Sorensen. I think it really prepared me and educated me about politics and state politics in particular, as well as just like creating laws and creating policy, which has definitely fueled my passion for it, obviously. I think it has helped me with an eloquence of words. And I feel so much more confident now with what I want to do. And because you're surrounded by such a good group of people who are equally passionate about the things that you are, and that kind of energy just fuels you and motivates you throughout the whole 2 weeks. I think it really kind of opened up this spark in me, which I had known I was interested in, but it like opened all these different doors for me right? Like, I didn't even know like policy writing was a real like thing, which sounds really bad, but I didn't. And I think for college, it's definitely made me more politically aware. And I think that's really helpful in college because sometimes you can get carried away with like the bubble that you're in.
And then do you have any parting advice to students that would be interested in the HSLP program or maybe on the fence about doing it?
Do it. That's all I'm gonna say. Do it. Just like go for it. I mean, the worst that can happen is that, you do this program and you're like, wow, I really don't like politics. That I think, but you still leave with some type of knowledge, whether you want to or not. I know people who attended the program that are not interested in politics. They're interested in medicine. They were pre-med or STEM or something along those lines, but they still did it because no matter who you are, politics, policy writing, it affects you. It has some influence in your life, whether you want it to or not. And it's much better for you growing up if you know more about the process. And I think Sorensen is just such an incredible experience that no matter who you are, it will affect you in some way positively. I recommend my friend, one of my close friends who was a junior when I was a senior, and I told her to do it, and she did do it, and now she loves it just as much as I do. It's a very unique experience that you can get as a high schooler, and most people have to wait till they're much older to have that experience. So if you can do it, if it's something that is applicable, it's possible, right? You have that time, you have some energy to do it, you should. I know, like for me personally, finance was somewhat of an issue, but Sorensen is such an understanding group of people that they're very willing to accommodate to your financial situation. So money should not be a problem. Even if you can't do the high school leaders program, which I still very highly recommend, you just try out. They still have many other ways you can get involved. I know they have their Emerging Leaders program, their political candidate program, their college Emerging Leaders program, I believe it's called. They have different ways that you can be in the Sorensen family, and it is a family worth investing and looking into. So that's what I think I would leave with.
Well, thanks for talking to me today, Choetsow, and calling me in from Harvard.
Thank you, you as well. Thank you so much.
Something that really struck me during Choetsow's interview was when she recounted being a middle schooler and all of a sudden being exposed to mental health issues without really having a vocabulary for it. I know from my own experience that this was true. That's why mental health education is so important, not only to educate students about empathy of what their peers may be going through, but to also have open support for students that might be struggling themselves. If you or someone you know may be struggling with a mental illness and you're looking for resources, the National Association of Mental Illness, known as NAMI, is a great place to find education and advocacy on all things related to mental health. They also have a toll-free helpline for people in crisis. You can go to NAMI.org to check them out, and that is NAMI.org. If you're interested in making a difference politically and are somewhat local to Virginia, but you don't know where to start, there are other Sorensen Institute programs that may be for you. So there are 5 Sorensen Institute programs, including the HSLP program. For example, there is the College Leaders Career Conference, which is open to college students looking to start a career in the political realm. The Political Leaders Program, which is a flagship program for Virginians interested in public service. Then there's the Candidate Training Program, which is focused on helping local politicians run an ethical and winning campaign. And then there's the Emerging Leaders Program, which specializes in younger leaders who have worked in state government and aim to increase their public service involvement. So if you think any of these programs sound interesting, or you know a great candidate for any of these, go to sorenseninstitute.org to find more about the application process. Thanks so much for joining us on Intersections in Public Service. If you want to take a listen to our other podcasts, you can visit the Weldon Cooper Center website at coopercenter.org or our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this or learned something new, please share this podcast with family or friends. Thanks again, and remember that anyone can be a public servant.